Hello folks and welcome to Tippcast with myself, Shane Stapleton, joined by Shane Brophy and Paul Carroll. We're going to have Noel Dumden on as well. We're a day late, and as the old saying goes, a day late is not a short, Shane. But look, we got here eventually.
An extra day's recovery after the weekend. Plenty of hurling and some pressure, but it was a brilliant weekend of hurling. Like, Jesus, the weather contrast, like Saturday was so lovely, and then you get out on Sunday and it's absolutely horrendous. Like, it's just the worst conditions, wind and cold rain and stuff. But it didn't dim the excitement and entirely the competitiveness in a lot of the games.
Okay, and Paul, yourself, it's really 4 seasons in one day stuff at the moment.
Yeah, it's the weekend really showed it. Yeah, Saturday was like you couldn't ask for better conditions for hurling in Semple Stadium on Saturday. No wind, no rain, no sun in the eyes, and then Sunday was just disastrous altogether. It was awful. You knew Sunday morning, especially when the kind of halftime scores of the intermediate games are coming in, you knew that the weather was going to have a big impact on how all those Sunday games played out.
Noel, what did you make of everything we saw over the weekend?
Yeah, some good games there, all right. I think much as the lads have described it there, 2 different seasons and 2 different styles of play as a result. When you get down to this stage of the year, championship games are always going to be won by desire and all that type of thing. But you can have as much desire as you want, but when the elements throw up like what they threw up on Sunday, that kind of goes out the window, and it comes down to grit, and it comes down to that real sort of hunger to win every single little morsel of possession. And that's what we saw on Sunday when it came down to it, really, in contrast to the Saturday, which was a perfect day for hurling, so really difficult for teams. I'm sure the teams that went out on Sunday would be kind of saying, God, if only we'd been playing on Saturday. But that's the way it goes, that's the way the cookie crumbles.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all covered in the Nina Guardian, so go out and get your copy there. You can see the McCarthy brothers, Dara and Kevin on the front there. They combined for a fair few scores between them. Shane, we will start off with Toom's victory over on Saturday. Like, it was incredible stuff the way they got over the line against McCarthy Burris. And they're just showing that staying power in every single game.
Yeah, I think that's mainly it. It was, I think they outstayed, like in a horse race in terms it's hard. I wouldn't say luck, but there's definitely there's a toughness and an old style Toom work ethic in this team. Like, look, it's easy to point to Darren McCarthy and the 2 goals he got, and they were brilliantly finished. But like, some of the last ditch defending of Toom was exceptional. Like, the 3 blocks that denied potential Moycarkey goals, 2 of which ended up in points at the other end of the field. Like, that's an 8-point swing in the game. It's the epitome of, like, nothing is ever a lost cause. Like, it doesn't matter if a player's going through 1 goal. Like, put your body on the line, like the likes of Seamus O'Farrell did, and I think it was Jake Ryan and Jake Aka. Jake had a massive impact on the games towards the end when he came on as a sub. But just those couple of things. I think Moycarkey will probably rue this, that this was a game that they could have won. Like, they were a better team for the first 23 minutes until the Jerry McCarthy's first goal. It was a real contrast in styles match. Like, you got Rory Breslan, and he was pucking the ball as far as he could with puck outs yet. On the other hand, you had, and in fairness to Toom, they were winning their fair share of the breaks. Like, it was obviously that their tactic is go along and hit the breaks. And look, there was a few times where the Moycarkey halfback, particularly Owen Hayes, caught some great ball out of the sky. But then at the other end, like, Rhys Shelley gave an exhibition of puckouts, pinpointing balls onto lies on the run, and it worked out for them too, and they got to a 10-7 lead. But then Darren McCarthy came into his own, and we saw just the 2 finishes were class. Like, just the first one was a bit of belligerence, like, just he sort of shrugged off his marker, and more or less out of sheer frustration, he leathered the ball as hard as he can, and sure, I'd say it was gone past Rhys Shelley before he knew it. And then the second one, I think, just a pit of, like, this guy has everything, because his work rate is unreal. Like, he chased down Tom Ryan, turned him over, easy point on in the wing, decided, no, there's a smell of a goal on here, played a 1-2 with Adam Hall, and then more or less placed the ball inside the post, like where Marie Shelley couldn't even get near it. Like, just there were two of the best finished goals I've seen now in a while, and no fair. Like, I just thought, yeah, there was a game of fine margins. Like, it was very, very even game, but just that I suppose the breaks fell Toomevara's way, or they made the breaks fall their way.
Yeah, Paul, what was your read on the game?
Yeah, similar to Shane there was some massive blocks that he mentioned there, Seamus O'Farrell, especially that Jake Hackett one, because it fell to Niall Heffernan, and you're nearly writing it down in your notebook that it was a goal because the way he was so clean through on goals. But Darren McCarthy was something else. Like, and Kevin McCarthy, I think Kevin scored 5 points from play, really tidy player. They actually work off each other really well. Darren knocked a couple down for Kevin, who's always really good in around the break, but the goals before half-time were massive because Toom were actually poor enough for the first 20-odd minutes of the game. Tom Ryan seemed to be going pretty okay on Darren McCarthy. Then he went down with an ankle injury and seemed to be in a little bit of bother, and it looked like his day was going to be finished, but he stayed on the field, and that's when Darren McCarthy got those 2 goals. Then before half-time was between Tom Ryan getting injured and half-time. So the second half then, I think one of the last plays of the game was a real kind of eye-opener for what to expect from Darren McCarthy. He got the ball around the middle of the field and played a 1-2, and he just has this burst of speed. He rode about 3 or 4 tackles, and I think he won a free for a finish, but it's that burst of speed, that bit of class he has. It's really impressive stuff for a 19-year-old, and what is he, 352 in the championship? Like, it's just crazy stuff, really. And what a year he's had between Harty Cup under 20 and leading Toom to a county final for the first time since 08.
Yeah, and no, just to get your thoughts, but also like to frame it up, it's, to get to their first county final since 2008. Coming into the game, Ken Dunn talked about how, they were favourites this time, which is probably a new thing. So on a big stage, favourites, bit of history there, the whole lot, bit of expectation. They dealt with the occasion pretty well.
They did, and I suppose, you mentioned Ken Dunn. He's a great man to have in your corner, because he's seen so much down through the years with Toomevara, mostly in situations, I suppose, where they would have been favourites to win the games that they were playing. So I'd imagine that Ken would have been talking to his team quite a lot about the kind of maybe how to deal with that pressure of being the favourite and all that. They certainly didn't look to have any great difficulty with it after the first quarter, maybe 20 minutes or so, because they did struggle a little bit in that period, as the lads were saying there. But the interesting thing was that it finished at half-time. I think it was 11 scores apiece at half-time, 2-9 to 11 points. The difference being that Toomevara had those 2 goals to back themselves up. Now, in other situations, and if you didn't have a standout marquee player like Darren McCarthy, the possibility is that those 2 balls would have been tapped over the bar and you finish at 11 points apiece, which would have put a different complexion on the game at the interval. As it wound up, they finished up, I think it was 20 points, 20 scores to 21. Again, the goals being the difference. Darren McCarthy's 2 strikes being the difference there. But Toomevara certainly played a better second half, I think. They were a little bit more composed on the ball. And as the lads mentioned there, the 2 McCarthys as well were really, really good in the forward line. But they weren't alone. They had plenty of other players too who played very well for them, And I just think that when it comes into the final, right, they're not going to be favourites for the final. Lochmore will be favourites there. So that's not going to bother Toomevara unduly. I think they're a very dangerous animal in that final,
And a word for Moycarkey, Shane. I mean, they got back to within 2 points with something like 7 or 8 minutes to go. They were there for most of this game.
Yeah, no, they were. As I said, they had their chances. They had the goal chances. Just on another day, maybe those blocks don't happen and end up in the back of net, and then they're in a county final. It just look. I'm sure they'll think back and this, God, what an opportunity missed. Like, was now you have to go back to the bottom of the hill next year, and but I'm sure in some ways they'll start from a better place than they were at the start of this year. Mid-finalists, first county final in 40 years. They've come on a lot. I suppose they've finally batted that bit of progression that we knew they had the talent with. Now it's just to find that extra level. Look, they have a very, very deep panel. You think David Costigan coming off the bench, he's probably going to be pushing for a start next year. He's very, very good for Nina CBS, I think, this year. Niall Heffernan, he was a former county under-21 All-Ireland winner, or under-21 or the other. Like, you think, I don't know whether he was away or injured or what, but he'll. You think if you get him fully fit, he'd be pushing there as well. I just thought maybe subbing off Bill Flanagan and thought was a bit. I thought he was going very, very well. Maybe to go down the preordained route. I thought maybe he wasn't maybe one of the guys that needed to be pulled off, as I thought he's their sort of direct style of running that causes problems. But look, overall, they'd have to be pretty happy with the year. I thought Stephen Walsh had another great game. I'd be thinking, could he be potentially one that maybe the tip management would look at? Owen Hayes as well. Maybe there's a rawness to him. God, he's a big unit and very, very strong under the dropping ball. So look, in terms of and Kieran Cummins as well in the middle of the field got 3 points to play. But look, overall disappointment for Moycarkey in terms of the game, but look, in terms of the year, a big step forward.
And then I suppose just moving on to the next game, Lochmore, impressive against Thurles, Paul.
Yeah, sure. It was just unbelievable performance from John McGrath. Really, he's the one that stood out of their 17 points. He got 12 of them. Just led the line so well. It was a real kind of battle of a game in the conditions. And I think did Lochmore go in? Was it 2 points up at halftime? A point up at halftime, 11 points to 2-4. They'd conceded those 2 Paddy Creedon goals, and you kind of felt like the concession of those goals was going to be a big issue, given the context of the day. But the second half come out and they were playing against the wind, against the elements, and they just played it so well. They're so good at just battling for a ball. John McGrath is able to hold up the play. They were winning kind of clever frees and things like that. And they just they made things really difficult for Thurles. Thurles, I suppose, were, if we saw the game against Nina, lots of shots from distance. They had 50 odd shots that day, and Sunday just really wasn't the day for that style. And they probably struggled to adapt to the conditions a little bit more than Lochmore did. But just incredible stuff from Lochmore just to be. I think it was their 9th championship game in 10 weeks. And you wouldn't think it looking at them. They're going for every ball. They play so well together, so clever. And it was just pure experience, and that kind of saw them out because, as I was saying, that first half, it was looking a bit shaky because the full back line was really under pressure. I think 2 or 3 balls went into Paddy Creedon and Lee McCormack in a row, and they looked unstoppable between getting points and goals between the two of them. So, it was just incredible by Lochmore. And I suppose Massey McGrath kind of sitting on Ronan Maher really was the big tactical thing that probably changed the game, because Ronan has been dictating every Sarsfield's game for the last 3-4 years, but he wasn't able to probably influence the game as much as normal because Massey McGrath was just sitting on him the whole game.
Noel, Thurles were very, very disappointing, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely, Shane. A big downer for the town and for the club and all the rest of it. Just funny, Sunday morning you wake up and you look out and you go, oh God, you just kind of knew that it wasn't going to suit our lads, but not that, look, those conditions don't suit anybody, to be honest with you, but there's a grit in Lochmore that you don't see in too many clubs. There's a real grit there. And I often think that to kind of, we speak about the great spirit that there is in the club and in the team, and they're great lads to be going Sunday after Sunday, hurling and football, alternative weekends. And I think to leave it at that is to almost dismiss the level of capability that there is in the team in terms of both hurling and football. These guys are well able to hurl. They have great skill. They have great method about what they do. And yes, they have that great spirit and they have that huge determination, but they're also able to play, and they're able to play to a system. And Paul mentioned there about them putting Massey McGrath in on Ronan Maher. And being honest, I've been watching teams for a long time playing against Arses, and I can't understand how they're leaving Ronan Maher free all the time. Surely you put a guy on him to sit on him and try and curb his influence. Lochmore did that, but it wasn't just that move either. It was the way they used the ball in the game. They kind of played the ball around the centre so that Ronan was being left in the middle, almost isolated. The play wasn't played around him. I think also too, though, you'd have to wonder why Sarsfield started to go short in the second half. When they had great success early on in the first half, playing that long ball through where Lee McCormick was on fire and set up Paddy Green for those goals. But that didn't happen in the second half. They started to try to play through the lines. God almighty, of all days going, that wasn't a day for it. Sunday was not a day for that kind of game. It was about getting the ball into the danger area as quickly as you can, or maybe getting the ball away from your own danger area as quickly as you could, But yeah, big disappointment for the team and for the club. I think it was just a case of too many of the team did not play well, or were not let play well, maybe.
One thing that I noticed, Shane, with Lochmore is that when they're going short in that weather, they use the hand pass. When other teams go short in this weather in Tip and other counties as well, they tend to try and use the stick for short play, and it's not as safe. Obviously, it's more difficult to do. The wet, you name it, it's more difficult. So I thought they were smarter at how they played short, but also like your thoughts on Thurles, like take out the Creedon goals early doors, and they were fairly toothless in attack.
They were, and I for one couldn't understand how they were touted as favourites for this game. I thought the Nina game was made so much easier from the fact that Nina just offered very little intensity. It was too easy for Thurles to get like 50 shots off and 29 scores last Sunday. They only scored 11 times. And look, I think some of it can be down to conditions. I would have said that, as Noel said, when they looked out Sunday morning, you knew that while they weren't going to help either team, you knew Lochmore were going to be able to adapt better. Their hurling style and football, they play the very, very same way. They mind the ball. They use it to the very, very, very best of their ability. They try not to hit aimless ball up the field. They're very, very smart in what they do. Like you mentioned, Mossy McCormick. Brian, John, and Noel tend to get a lot of the applause. So I think Mossy's having an absolutely massive year at centre forward. I think he's the unsung hero, one of the unsung heroes of that team. He knows his role. He knows his limitations. He just gets on the ball and works it onto the guys who can score, or he'll make sure that maybe the opposition's centre back doesn't dictate the game. And look, he did that to a T. I think he's a player that if you took him out of the Lochmore team, he'd actually be massively missed.
Paul, Lochmore, I mean, just controlled performance.
Yeah, it's pure experience, really, and even things didn't really go their way. I suppose Kieran McCormick had been coming on in a lot of games and having a big impact. He started the other day and probably really couldn't get into the game as much as Lochmore would have liked, but then they're able to bring on Kieran McGrath, and he ends up having a massive goal chance kind of last puck of the game. And Paddy McCormick, one of his best ever saves, I'd say, and he's been playing in goals for 20 odd years with Thurles. Just an unbelievable across the body, shoulder height, kind of real difficult ball to get to, kept it out to keep Thurles in it. But yeah, I suppose Thurles gave away a few very silly frees as well. I think James Armstrong was caught for one or two just silly ones where John McGrath's running out to the sideline, kind of I think he didn't even have a hurley in his hand and pushing him out over the line, that sort of thing. So there's a bit of cuteness with how John McGrath plays and how Lochmore play, and the two Connollys. Kieran Connolly seems to be kind of well back, following all those injuries. He seems to be kind of full fitness now, and he was able to take probably the heaviest shoulder in the whole championship this year from Ronan Maher and pop back up off the ground. So yeah, look, it sets up a really interesting final between Lochmore and Toom, because they probably both play in a similar way in terms of being really hard working. They both kind of have forwards that can hold up the ball, and yeah, I can't wait for county final day, because I'd say it's going to be a massive occasion given the four teams and all four divisions that are involved in it.
Noel, what about the future of Thurles here? We know that there's huge depth, obviously the very strong second team, never mind the first team that continuously pushed to the latter stages. But there's a few players there that, have an awful lot of miles on the clock. We know there's talent coming underage. We've talked about some of the names coming and all that. But it does feel like, despite all the depth and all that kind of stuff, there does seem to be something lacking here. And like over the next year or two, maybe a couple of players will transition out again. And I'm just wondering, are Thurles going to be getting closer or further away within the next year? Maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, when the likes of Ewan Murray and Killian Minogue establish themselves, maybe the sky's the limit. But like in the next year or two, do you feel the team will get any closer?
Yeah, I still think there's a bit of work to be done, Shane, to be honest, there would have been aspects of the season that you wouldn't have been happy with early on in particular, and they seem to have shaken off a lot of those difficulties and maybe ironed out a few issues in their team. But you mentioned the second team there, and while it's tremendous to have a second team pushing so hard all the time, it can also hamstring you a little bit when it comes to your first team, in the sense that you might be a little bit more reluctant to throw guys on in the Dan Breen team, because you're going to maybe ruin the Seamus O'Riordan team, and I'm thinking, let's say, the likes of Kieran Costello there, a tip footballer, senior footballer, and a big guy, very physical guy, fine hurler. The likes of him would probably have gotten the opportunity in the senior team earlier, had he not been going so well with the Seamus O'Riordan team, or had the Seamus O'Riordan team not been going so well up to that game with Cashel. And then, you're talking, right, Mossy McCormick was missing the last day. Mossy picked up a serious injury a couple of games ago, and he was one who would come into the team and brought an element of physicality as well. But, when you talk about the younger guys, then it's a very difficult team to break into, because of the fact that you have an established core there. And Lee McCormack broke into the team this year. Well, he only broke into the team for the Nina game, really, which is only a game ago. He'd been only in and out as a sub, but he is one that had been kind of on the radar for 3 or 4 years, and it's only now that he's getting the chance. And I think that has been a problem, that it has taken players a long time to actually get into the team. When you think of the likes of Aidan McCormack, when he came into Rowan and Maher, now look, marquee players and exceptional players, but they were brought into the team almost out of minor, and they've been there since. But other guys, it has taken them a lot longer to actually get a sustained run in the team and to nail it down. I think there has been a lot of success at underage with Thurles and all that too. And when you look at it, when you contrast that with Lochmore, where they're getting maybe a player a year, a new player a year, or bringing a guy through, and it'll take them a couple of seasons to establish themselves, but they're getting that opportunity to establish themselves. Look, there will be a lot of optimism in the club, I'm sure, for the future, but there's still a bit of work to be done. It's interesting when you talk about Lochmore there. I just, as Paul was speaking there, I recall Sean Mokler, the great Sean Mokler, who was a former chairman of the Tip Football Board and a great GA man, Lochmore Castellani man. I remember asking him at one stage, what's the secret to Lochmore? What's the story? And he said to me 3 things. He said, there's only one ball on the pitch. That's the first thing. If you have the ball, you make sure you make the most of it. If you don't have the ball, you do everything in your power to win it back. They're the principles that Lochmore have been playing on for the last 30 years, and they've had a lot of success with it. So it sounds very simple, but it's straightforward enough,
Yeah, they're never best, apparently. Shane, Laura, talk to us about the experience of the relegation. Like, you've written about it in the Nina Guardian this week, but Laura 118, Tipperary 115, relegation playoff. You survived. What was that experience like for you?
It was, I'd say, at the final whistle, it was more relief than anything else. Just even back in Laura on Sunday night, having a bite to eat after, just there wasn't any more. There was no elation really. It's just pure relief. Like, and I think anybody who's played in these games, whatever grade, like, they're absolutely horrible. Like, and they're just pressured. It's that fear of losing, really. Like, they're nearly bigger games than finals itself. Like, because I said, there's something about your status, whether it's senior, whether it's first tier, second tier, third tier. You don't want to be dropping down. It's not a good look, and it's so hard to find your way back up. And then you find out the morning of the game that you're going in as favourites anyway against a team that's maybe has down a couple of players with injury, and then you find out that their best player is also injured, Sean Ryan, and you think, what an opportunity. But Jesus, also pressure if you don't win it, and they down their best forward. And geez, with 10 minutes to go, when Sean Collins got their goal to go level, and we were into the wind, and said, God, we're in serious bother here. But there's something about our lads, like when they got the goal, we actually hurled our best hurling in that game in the last 10 minutes. Like, we were way more composed on the ball. We started to find our men. And I suppose we saw it with the Conor Kennedy goal. just a lovely finish from the guy, 1-2 from play on the day. He's a really outstanding young talent. And it was the same in the county final replay against Sarsfields last year, where we were a point down with a couple of minutes to go. All the momentum was with Thurles, and yet we got ourselves the 2 points at the very end to go ahead and win by a point. Just there's something about our lads where maybe when the Gunners put to their head, they draw more out, or maybe the favourites tag doesn't suit us or what. But like there's no doubt about it, when the pressure's on, we're able to respond. It would just be nice maybe when the games are a bit more open, that we'd maybe be a bit more ruthless or maybe more secure in possession. But look, it was relief for us. And like I mentioned in my piece, I was nearly as disappointed for Tipperary. I thought they were heroic in the circumstances. Like if you were down Sean Ryan, Adrian Ryan, Brian Stapleton, I know there was a couple of guys carrying injuries as well and who played, you would have said, geez, we'll just throw our hat at it. We'll lose by 10 or 12 points. What you know when luck is going against you. But geez, they were outstanding. And look, I didn't expect anything easy. I knew well the 15 guys they put out there and the few subs that come on were going to fight tooth and nail, and that's what they did. And look, I know there's a bit of chatter that maybe some of them, and a lot of these guys are probably the 2008 vintage that came up from intermediate in the first place, that maybe they were going to hang it up. I really hope they don't. I hope they stick it around for one more year and just help the club solidify themselves back in Premier Intermediate, because you just don't want to slide to develop. And look, I would say Tipperary with their best 15 on the field next year will go very, very close to winning a Premier Intermediate, because they have the firepower up front. Okay, maybe defensively they're a bit open, but I think we saw in the Cashel Gortnahoe game, there's something about the Premier Intermediate grade where it's less. I suppose you can probably get away with maybe a leaky defense if you have a good attack. Like we had that a bit ourselves last year, where our attack was a better defense. But look, it was just a relief more than anything else to get through that match.
And since you mentioned Premier Intermediate, might jump straight onto the first of the two semi-finals. Cashel Kincormac and Upperchurch were favourites from the start of the year, having gone down last year, but an 8-goal thriller, 6-21 to 2-28 after extra time, Paul. Like it was crazy stuff to watch. But Jesus, Cashel have some scoring threat.
Yeah, unreal. It was such an exciting game to be at and to see. There was, it was just score for score. I think it finished up as a 2-20 apiece on full time, and it was 13 apiece at half time. Just back and forth, really. Devin Ryan got some crazy scores in the first half, over the shoulder stuff. The David McGrath scored the early goal for Cashel, and Cashel were much the better team for the first 20-odd minutes, and then Paddy Green kind of pulled a goal out of nowhere, long ball, landing in around the square, touched it and finished it. So real good game, real entertaining game to watch. But it looked like Upperchurch had done enough really in the last couple of minutes. They were up by a point, and Paddy Fahy, who was just asked to make so many runs and do so much work for Upperchurch or for Cashel, made one last lung busting run down through the middle of the field. Probably got chopped. It was play on, and then he kind of runs into a defender and gets a free to level it, and to extra time we go. And then extra time just was spun in about a 90-second period, where Oisin O'Donoghue got 2 quick goals and won a penalty a minute or two later from a line ball that came into him, and Owen Connolly finished it. So the goals in the first period of extra time was the difference, really. But I suppose from an Upperchurch point of view, they did take off Paddy Phelan just with about a minute or two to go in normal time. That was when they were maybe a point up, and I just presumed that was maybe to try and see it out kind of substitution, because he was hurling. He'd scored a brilliant goal himself off his knees. He'd 1-3, I think, scored, and I was full sure he was going to come back on in extra time, but he didn't, and he was a big loss for Upperchurch. I don't know, is he injured now or what, but it's some win for Cashel now to get back to a final. I've had lots of kind of near misses in the last couple of years. Lost to Shane's Laura there last year in the semi-final, and they lost the semi-final to Templederry a couple of years ago in quarterfinals and things like that. So they're a team that have always been young the last couple of years, but I think a lot of their players are just starting to kind of come of age at the right time, and still a very young profile in that team.
Yeah, Noel, what do you think?
Yeah, I'd be of similar view to the lads. I think we've probably been waiting for this Cashel performance, or this Cashel run for a while, especially considering the players that they have and the players that they've gained over the last while. I think they've bedded in really well now, and that has taken a little bit of time. But when you look down through the team, I mean, there's huge talent there. The Bonners are really putting in good shifts this year for Cashel as well. They've been very impressive. Oisin O'Donoghue, as the lads have mentioned too. But it's a big blow to Upchurch now. Big blow. They were everybody's favourites to bounce back up, and possibly even in their own heads that they thought that it would just happen that they would bounce back up into the senior rank. And people would say that they were too good of a team to be in the Premier Intermediate grade, but it hasn't worked out that way. And next year is a major year for Upchurch, because if you don't go back up within a year or two, then guys begin to move away. You get into the groove of playing in the Premier Intermediate grade, which is a different groove, as the lads have alluded to there, to playing in senior, and you can kind of become stuck in that rut almost. It was disappointing for them. I think they would have thought that they were of a higher grade than the Premier Intermediate. But by God, Cashel, look, you score 6 goals, you're very difficult to beat, aren't you? And Cashel proved that on Saturday. There's great excitement there in the stadium. On actually, probably it was probably a more exciting game than the senior game which followed. So there have been some tremendous games in the Premier Intermediate grade this year, and sometimes they get overshadowed by the senior. But by God, there has been some fantastic hurling in the grade, and I think we're in for a lovely final as well.
Shane, there's comments there about, this player will get a call up from Liam Cahill, this person has to be looked at. And also including games we haven't touched on yet, we'll come on to Gortnahoe and Carrick Swan in a while. But Oisin O'Donoghue, he was brilliant for the under-20s. Are there players there now that you're thinking, right, this guy has to be called up or looked at? Or did you feel across the board there wasn't that many players that you think could make a big difference to Tip next year?
There's not. I think maybe Liam Cahill will probably be choosing on potential and maybe building maybe for long term in terms of, okay, is there a guy here we could shape to over the next couple of years? There's not too many, but there's definitely a potential. You mentioned in terms of Cashel, Oisin O'Donoghue, very, very good. I think Cahill Quinn, while he is in with Tip, I think he's sort of centre back sort of role, deep line role. He's been very, very effective in the last few games, and he's been very, very good for I think one of the Limerick colleges. I think he's with in Fitzgibbon for a couple of years. So he's had a very very good game. I think I've always been a Devin Ryan fan. There's a bit of a Bubbles O'Dwyer in him. He's just, when he gets the ball, he knows where the score is. He can be mercurial. He can be quiet in patches of games, but stick a ball in his hand, he knows where to score it. And it does. I have to give a lot of credit to TJ Conley, because look, you have to think the last 4 years, since probably they got the few players in from transferred in, I suppose it's added a bit of pressure on the club, and you think that there should be motoring here, there should be. And I just watched when Ger Brown was being taken off. Ger didn't start; he was brought on. As far as I only got in for the end of normal time. I don't think he started, Paul, did he?
Who? Ger Brown? He came on and for David McGrath,
yeah, he came on, and he I suppose he and then he was being taken off again in extra time. And I just said, I watch the body language here. Ger, no, just fist or shook hands with, and I said that you're doing what's right for the team. And TJ Conley's after knitting that thing together, because I'm sure there was for a few years there in terms of how do you bond all these, maybe the newcomers and then the regular guys together. TJ's managed to do that, and people always look at Cashel and Ger Brown, and so Ger was the great. I suppose he was the pick of maybe the few lads that were coming in, and look, between injuries and whatever, he just hasn't kicked on, and he's struggling even to get in the Cashel team at the moment. Even his brother Aaron, I think he started the quarter final, but didn't hit that. But Johnny Ryan actually started the Sarsfield or Borlahan match. I don't know whether it's a tactical thing or what. They're switching their goalies, or maybe Johnny Walsh was injured against Sarsfield. So like they have great depth there. And just going back to Tip, on the Upperchurch side, I've like Paddy Phelan. We know he was on the Tip minor squad 2 years ago. I would say he'd probably have a big year at under 20 next year. I think Keith Ryan is the type of nuggety defender that Tip senior hurlers could do it. I think if Tip are going to start building again, not only do we need talent, I think we need guys with a bit of steel in the head, and maybe they mightn't be the top class defender, but they're going to be they're going to give you absolutely everything. And I think I'm a big fan of Keith Ryan in that respect, in terms of he'll give you everything. He'd be a great guy to have in a dressing room.
Yeah. River Power says Brown is not struggling to get in the team. He's had a serious elbow operation, so he's not right. He's had pins taken out recently, I heard. So I suppose that would change the conversation a small bit.
Well, I'm not having a dig. I suppose his form hasn't been good enough to get in the team, whether he's coming back from injury or not. Sure. Last year when he was fully fit, he was subbed off in a game against, I think, Ballina in a knockout in a game that we played against him in the semi-final last year. He didn't exactly light it up either. Like, he's not, I suppose, from the guy we saw at under 19, under 20 level, under 21 level, I suppose he hasn't progressed. So that's not to say he won't. But that's the only point. Like, he probably is the name when we look at anytime I hear the start of the year, where's Ger Brown? Because we know the ability that's there, and we're still hoping that it might come true someday.
Yeah, the other semi-final then, Carrick Swan 18, Gortnahoe Glengoule 14, Paul. That was the Pistons of Rain, that we might as well put it. Couldn't have been more different in terms of a scoring spectacle from the other semi-final.
Yeah, no, you just knew the conditions were going to have a massive impact on this game, and it was shocking bad conditions. Gortnahoe actually had the wind and the rain in the first half, but probably didn't make hay at all. They went in 2 points up, but you kind of felt that wasn't going to be enough at all. They really struggled to get anything going outside of Keane Hayes. It was a complete Keane Hayes show in the Gortnahoe forwards. In that game throughout. I have it down what he scored. He scored 11 points out of Gortnahoe's 14. So that's going to be disappointing from a Gortnahoe point of view, that they couldn't get anyone else really. Darren Maher got a point, I think, and then Conor Gleeson, the wing back, kind of came forward for 2 points as well. So outside of that, you're just dependent on Keane Hayes, and he was as good as he always is. And at the other end of the field, Davy Nolan was effective as well at full back. But yeah, Carrick Swan, they're just playing a really good brand of hurling. They have serious belief in themselves, I think, as well, and they have brilliant support behind them. And I think Danny O'Hanlon has been coming on to games and affecting him, and he seems to always have a moment in him in every game he comes on. They played us in the quarterfinal, and he came on and scored a point straight away and popped off a lovely pass to, I think, Callum Lanigan to put it over. But in this game, there was kind of a point or two in it for most of the second half. Then Danny O'Hanlon comes on and fires over a point from 45 yards out near the sideline, and the roar that went up when that ball went over the bar to put 3 between them with about 5 to go, that seemed to give Carrick Swan a huge bit of momentum. They won the next puck out and kind of just drove it on from there. But yeah, they're really impressive. Gavin O'Halloran, centre back, is kind of running the show. Aaron O'Halloran in midfield then, and their cousin Eric O'Halloran is the captain at wing forward, and real hard working player. They've hard workers all over the field, but then they have Callum Lanigan is shooting the lights out this year. I think he got 9 points the other day. And Aaron Dunn in full forward line was really good as well. Got 3 second half points. So it sets up what I can't wait for that final between Carrick Swan and Cashel, because they're both going to be really well supported, I'd imagine. They're both going to be desperate to get back up to senior, and it's good for hurling and Tip in general to have another either West team or another South team going senior. So it can only be a good thing, I think, for hurling in the county in general.
Yeah, but no, Gortnahoe Glengoule, they've been close a few times now, and they're just not getting over the line in the Premier Intermediate grade.
Yeah, just not getting there, and they've had a few different coaches there with them in the time, and they're just short that small little bit. Dinny Ferncombe was the coach with them this year, and I would have spoken to Dinny a few times about them, and that, and they felt that they were coming right and coming well. They've had good underage teams in the last while. Even just in this week past, they won the under 15A hurling final in mid-tip there, beat Thurles, which was a big win for them on Tuesday night, I think it was. So they have a lot coming, but obviously the under 15s a little bit too late for a senior yet at this stage. It's going to take them a while to come through, but they have been doing a hell of a lot of work in Gortnahoe. Even from the point of view of physical development, they've a second pitch out there now. Really brave move. They took down their stand even to facilitate that new field. So there's a lot of work going on in Gortnahoe, Glengool, and you'd love to see them make the breakthrough. But it's taken them a while. They've been kind of knocking around semi-final stage, final stage. Get to mid-finals, maybe beaten in semi-finals, that kind of thing. And they just need to get that little break to get them there. But it's the final. We're looking at two town teams in the final in Carrick and Cashel, and we've all 4 divisions represented on county final day, which will be a big thing. I expect we'll have a right good crowd in Semple Stadium for the county final. With the as I say, with the 4 divisions there, and you know what, the Premier Intermediate final could be the game of the weekend. In that weekend, it could be potentially a better game than the county senior final.
Yeah, Shane, how good are the Swan?
They're geez, I tell you, there seems to be there's serious momentum with them. Like, you think they're unbeaten all year. They're South senior champions. It's like they've beaten Mullinahone, or did they beat? Yeah, they beat Mullinahone along the way. Like, so, like, I haven't seen I've seen some of their some clips of them. I wouldn't have seen too many of their games, but like, I suppose they're finally bringing that South form out into the county. It was interesting. I think it was a Gavin O'Halloran, I heard, might have been speaking to you, Paul, on Tip FM, that they were sort of getting tired of the fact that maybe they're being talked down as the team that couldn't bring their form up the county, and they wanted to do that. And just like Gavin O'Halloran, for pound, is one of the best club hurlers in the county, and I know he got a look in with Tip last year, and not sure whether he was retained or whether he's on the extended panel or what, but like, he's just a great leader at centre back. Aaron O'Halloran, the county under 20 full back, middle of the field, and geez, like, he's a colossus there in terms of getting on the ball. And I'm not sure what age Callum Lanigan is, Paul. I don't know if you've heard, but
he's only sort of year up senior, I think. So he's only about 19, I think.
He's sort of a name that sort of come out of nowhere. I don't even remember him maybe at tip underage level, but like, he's taken on the scoring load at centre forward, and it's like taking like a duck to water. So like, they really have serious momentum, and I think like I think they have a massive chance in the final. I think if people just look at the two teams and think, Cashel have the names, they should go up, I think they'll be very. This is a 50-50 game for me, like, because like they both have strong claims to go up. And just to touch back on Gortnahoe, like, they just got to be patient. Like, you think Noel mentioned under 15 win, which is massive. They won the county minor B final last weekend as well. Again, I think was it last year they won the under 19 B championship, or they were in the final. Like, they're getting to county finals regularly at underage level between A and B. Like, so. I just think maybe the weather conditions maybe turned against them small bit last week. They relied very, very heavily on Cian Hayes in the game. Like, the conditions probably turned against the likes of Darian Corbett, just a little light, and maybe the Swans, the way the Swans set up, they were able to crowd things out a bit in defence, and maybe a slight player like that would come against them. But look, I think no more than Cashel for a couple of years there were the nearly men, and look, they still have one step to go. I think Gortnahoe, they're thereabouts. Like, there's while I'm sure there'll be disappointment this week in terms of what their Premier Intermediate team, like, what they're doing at underage level is very, very impressive.
We'll look at the relegation then in Premier Intermediate, Paul. So it finished Newport 118, Tracys 215. So Shane already talked about the horror of going through a relegation clash. These two teams will have to do it all over again.
Yeah, and as far as I know, a few players on both teams were kind of flown back from all around the world for the final, so it could make things difficult the next 2 weeks, whether lads are staying or going back or whatever. But yeah, this was a true relegation battle, I suppose, watching the game back. Awful conditions inside Nina made things really difficult. It's kind of at half-time, Newport were only up by, 2 points, and, Tracys had the elements in the second half, and it looked like Newport were really going to be on the back foot. And Tracys went up by 5 points, I think, with about 15 minutes to go, and that was a massive goal. But I think they only scored 2 points from the last 15 minutes of the game, and that was with the wind. They probably tired a bit. And Newport, to their credit, really battled back well. They brought on Conor O'Mahony, but the main man for him was Colin Floyd. He was just unbelievable looking back on the game, winning like dirty ball in the conditions, winning the frees, putting them over the bar. And he was the real difference, I suppose, in Newport going down and living to fight another day. I think Sean Tracys would have been walking out of Nina the more disappointed of the two teams. They had a chance with the last puck of the game. Their goalkeeper, Shane Stapleton, has a massive puck out, landed it down into the 14 with the wind. It broke off to one of their, it was number 12. I might have his name written down in front of me, Killian Kendi, and he's on the turn and just fires across the face of the goals and wide. And that was the last puck of the game, and it ended the draw. So it goes to another day. I hope for both sets of players it's better conditions than they had to play in Newport or in Nina on Sunday. But a true relegation battle, neighbouring clubs, neither of them wanted to give an inch. And I'm excited to see how that replay goes.
Noel, do you think replay is the right way? Now, and the context that I'd ask this is, I lost the Junior B quarter-final up here in Dublin after extra time and penalties on Sunday. Imagine playing extra time at my age. But do you think it's fair that these teams have to go to a replay again, or should they have tried to decide it on the day?
I think, given the context of the day, probably the replay would have been the right choice. All right, to be honest, Shane. If these games are pressurized games, and when they're played in mudbats like that and in horrendous conditions, you just would feel for somebody who might make a mistake, and particularly in a really tight game. And obviously, if it's going to a replay, it has been a really tight game, and you would just feel for somebody who maybe might make a mistake that ends up with your team going down. So I suppose neither Newport nor Sean Tracys would be too upset by the fact that they both live to fight another day and hopefully battle it out in blazing sunshine. Because the way the summer is going, you could have 26 or 7 degrees the next day out, rather than playing it in a monsoon, But yeah, I think it probably doesn't impact too much on either team to have a replay at this level, at this stage of the year, and so fair play, it's a replay. And I think a lot of people would be mad to get to see that match too. That's the other point about it. It was put on against a lot of other games when maybe you just can't get them. But I think a lot of people would be mad to see that match now as well.
And Shane, your own thoughts then? And there were, like was said earlier by Paul, there were players flown in from different places. Will they be flown in again?
Yeah, I was looking at the James Hayden's match report. Sean Tracys flew in Brian Carey and Diarmuid Kennedy from Dubai. Newport had Odrin Floyd. He came back from Australia, and Sean O'Brien, I'm not sure where Sean came back from, but Sean definitely, I'm not sure whether Sean had retired or what, but he definitely hadn't featured up to last Sunday. And of course, Conor O'Mahony didn't feature up until the semi-final. So everybody's been wheeled out to try and save their status. I think one of the Newport players is definitely hanging around. I'd say Dubai, probably they've gone back and come back. I thought maybe that they would refix it for next Saturday. Just okay, maybe if lads are home, they keep them home. Maybe both clubs are happy enough to leave it for a fortnight and go again. I think Newport probably take a bit more momentum out of the drawn game, considering they're 5 points down in playing against the Breeze. They came back and managed to get a draw. I think maybe they'll take a small bit more from that game, just in terms of momentum and maybe a bit of belief, and that they know their character is there, that they didn't throw in the towel. But I'd be agreeing with Noel. I think when it comes to relegation, I don't think I don't think penalties is the way to decide that. I know I would assume maybe penalties will be the way it'll go and then the next day, but definitely I think a replay after the draw matches after 60 minutes is a fair result, is a fair way to decide it.
Penalties are some crack though, I have to say.
It's like a celebrity death match, so it is at a relegation level though.
Yeah, no, I enjoyed it the other day.
And you never think we'd be talking about it, but there's a fairly significant carbon footprint from this relegation playoff between Newport and Sean Tracys.
Well, like it's mad. Like you see, definitely in relegation, you won't fly home lads for county finals, but you fly them home for relegation matches. It's mad. It just whatever. It's something about it to just draw everything. Everything is thrown at surviving maybe a relegation match, if you know what I mean.
So then, like, because you experienced them in an intermediate final a few years ago, Shane, Moneygall, they're back there again. Obviously, it feels like their team's a bit different now. The conditions, like summer conditions, definitely suit the hurlers they have. Now, adjusting maybe to winter conditions could be a bit of a challenge because they didn't put up the same sort of score we've seen all year. They put up 117, beating Cap and White, which is good going, 117 to 115. Is there an element of adjusting to the conditions now because they are a top of the ground team, or that's how they've seemed so far all year?
Maybe, but I wouldn't downplay how well Cap and White played in the day, and they were very, very good. And we saw against Shannon Rovers, like their forwards they have some excellent forwards, and they really got off to a good start. And I'm sure there's probably a bit of pressure on Moneygall, and then the conditions on Sunday, I'm sure a lot of Moneygall players reminded of the year before when they lost to Boherlahan in extra time in a semi-final on a horrible day in Temple 2. You're thinking, God, could this happen again? And I actually think this could be the makings of Moneygall. They probably have had it very comfortable up to now, and maybe just coming through a bit of a grind, a bit of a battle would actually they'll grow from this. They found a way to win. Bobby, like sometimes I still remember in 2 years ago when we won the intermediate, like how the Borsa match was the year was the game we won the championship, because we probably should have been knocked out that day. We survived somehow and went on and won the championship. So like there's always a game where you just have to battle through, and Moneygall did it. But like Capel, we so frustrated, like considering the loss by 2 and the goal they gave away. I don't know if you saw it, Shane. Just one of those, that modern day thing of the goalie heading off to the far side of the field, expecting a pass to come across, and it just never came his way, and the whole goal opened for Sean Kennelly.
Yeah, and Paul, like between Moneygall winning and Ballingarry, like they didn't put up a huge score, but they saw off goal Kilfeacle. That was 113 to 2-9. So we know the two finalists now. Yeah,
both of those games were on at 12 o'clock on Sunday, and I think that was nearly when conditions were at their worst. The Golden Ballingarry game, Ballingarry had the wind in the first half, and the halftime score was 110 to 1-1. So that probably tells the story of like just how much the elements were playing. But for Ballingarry, like this was, and not to be, it was a team effort, but Dylan Walsh was literally it was the Dylan Walsh show. Like, I've never seen a performance kind of like it in terms of everything was flowing through him. Like he was playing 1-2s with players and continuing his run, winning frees, putting them over. It was just everything Ballingarry were doing was coming off him. He set up the goal. He scored all 10 points they scored in the first half, and I think he scored 112 maybe out of the 113. And when you were talking earlier about players kind of being called into Tip, I think he's definitely one. Like he was in with Tip, I think 2 years ago. Now I'm not sure was he in with the panel this year or not.
No, he's definitely in with Colin Bonner. I don't think he was in.
Yeah.
He's been in with Liam Cahill so far.
Yeah, because like I feel maybe at the intermediate level, you really have to be putting on a show every game to probably get the call in, just because maybe it's a couple of grades down below. But like he's been doing everything he can, because those performances in the conditions, real leadership in the second half. He was back in the wing back line, winning dirty ball in front of the stand and things like that. But massive win for Ballingarry, and themselves against Moneygall. Now Moneygall will probably be favourites going in, but when you have a player in the form that Dylan Walsh is in, you always have a chance. So looking forward to that final as well. And for Moneygall, yeah, it's massive for them to get that win in the conditions, similar to how they lost last year. I can only imagine that will give them, and what is a young enough squad as well, huge kind of confidence for 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, what did you make of those two semi-finals, Noel?
Yeah, look, semi-finals are for winning, you know, and you see Ballingarry coming through and also Moneygall. You know, we would have probably expected Moneygall to come through, but they didn't have it all their own way. Neither did Ballingarry, but they've gotten there now. And you know, it's probably the thing that the actual fixture. I don't think the fixture has been made yet, but the venue could have a big bearing on the outcome of that game. And that
it's in Temple Toohey on Saturday week at 2 o'clock, I think.
Has been fixed. Okay, I was just going to say that if the game was fixed for the likes of Semple Stadium, I think Moneygall would have been very happy with a venue like that where they could use the expenses of the field. Temple Toohey is a fine field too, but you'll have some atmosphere there. You know, there'll be a big crowd there. They'll all be in around the grounds, and that'll be a right match. You know, I think as the lads mentioned about Dylan Walsh, you know, like he has been the standout player for Ballingarry without a question. The danger maybe from a Ballingarry point of view is if he's held or if his influence is curbed significantly, what can Ballingarry bring besides, you know? But yeah, I mean, you're talking about players that to look out for from an intercounty perspective. You'd certainly think that Dylan Walsh is one that Liam Cahill have his eye on. The fact that he's from his own club maybe might be easy for him to do that, but on the other hand, it might be very easy for him to do it, you know?
Yeah, I just think I just maybe something I've always felt a little disappointed that we don't make finals weekend. Like if there was a double header last weekend in the stadium, could there not have been a double header of finals on the Saturday as well next week, or maybe you have the intermediate and junior A final, or the intermediate and under 19 final with Holy Cross the same areas? That'll be a cracker too. I do think that pitch is in such good nick at the moment. I still do think it could take maybe 4 matches. I think the biggest promotional tool in Tipperary we have is Semple Stadium, and the more players and clubs you can expose to that field, and the occasion is massive. Like especially if you're maybe trying to promote €100 ticket to sell a house or a tip draw, just a small thing like that for the clubs involved can make a huge difference. And I do think there's a missed opportunity every year where you don't play maybe 4 finals on the one weekend in the stadium.
Shane, then Ballybacon Grange, they managed to retain their status against Upperchurch's second team, so relief there.
Yeah, I suppose tough weekend for Upperchurch. Didn't go back senior, and now we're back junior A. But they were probably struggling a bit since they came up 2 years ago from junior A. So I suppose the bigger probably loss would have been Ballybacon if they went back to junior A, which is a sharp pit in South Tip with the amount of teams that are there, and potentially maybe Mile Rovers will come up as they're in the final against Killadangan on Saturday week as well. And just before we move off it, I suppose I thought the game of the weekend last weekend, and it proved to be that, was going to be the minor A final between Thurles Og and Holy Cross, and it turned out to be that. It just rounded off a brilliant year for Tipperary underage hurling, like to have the minor A final. And I just wanted to say, like, fair play to Thurles Og, and I found out subsequently afterwards that an ex-colleague of mine, her son didn't play in the game, Kyle O'Dowd, and assuming he got a very he got an injury in the semi-final against Toomevara, and it turned out to be very, very serious. And thankfully he had a spell in hospital in his home, and like, I wish him the best. Like, it was a scary time from them, and I'm sure them winning on Saturday sort of helped his recovery too. So it was a nice win for Thurles Og in our circumstances.
It was an outstanding game. It was an outstanding game of hurling. You know, Thurles Og were 11 points down at one stage in that game, and the Holy Cross looked to have all the answers. They were really flying. But Thurles Og got 2 goals in pretty quick succession before half time, and it changed the complexion of the game. And it went right down, literally down to the last puck. There was a point in it, and Holy Cross had a couple of opportunities to level the game, but they went to begging, and Thurles Og prevailed. And it was a brilliant game of hurling. It really was, you know, in perfect conditions too, you know.
And just to jump onto the semi-finals then in the Tip football, which are going ahead this weekend, and at 1 o'clock, Mile Rovers against Lochmore Castleiney. That's in Cashel, as is Kilsheal and Kilcash against Clonmel Commercials. That's at 2:45. Shane, just to start off with Kilsheal and Kilcash, the fact that they've been out of the hurling actually for it's several weeks now at this stage. It certainly feels that way. This has been a real chance for them to concentrate on the one code and maybe try to ambush Clonmel.
Well, potentially, and I'm sure. I don't know. Interesting to see would Bill Maher make a surprise return at home for this game? Would you try and maybe he's fully transferred to a club in America, but like if you were throwing everything at this, like maybe what Peter Atchison did a few years ago when he was coming back from Dubai, I think Kilsheelan have a great chance here. Like Clonmel haven't been motoring as well as other years, and like they are down Seamus Kennedy and they're down James Morris, two of their better players. Like there's an opportunity there, and like that they did play Michael Quindivan at centre back against Ballina in the quarter final, and I'm just wondering maybe are Clonmel struggling maybe to replace maybe that person in the heart of the defence, which is what Kennedy and Morris they have done for the last few years. Like I think Kilsheelan have absolutely nothing to lose here. They were in the semi-final a few years ago against Commercials and Ardfinnan, and they sort of played a containment game where they ended up losing, but they didn't really. I think they were fearful maybe of a beating. Whereas I think this time, and Mark Keogh had a brilliant quarter-final performance. Like they have Dara Brennan. Like there's some very, very good players. I think the Commercials will be favourites. I think Kilsheelan, if they really go at this, I think. If there's a vulnerability in Commercials, it's there at the moment, particularly with the two players and the ability of the players that they're missing, could be key.
How do you think it'll go, Paul? The two semis?
Yeah, that game, I'm not sure if Coleman Kennedy is fit as well for Commercials. He'd be a massive loss as well. I'm not sure now. He could be back at this stage, but he has had a kind of an injury-riddled season so far. But Kilsheelan played Clonmel last year, and there was a point in it. So. And that would have been with Seamus Kennedy and the like. So, massive chance for Kilsheelan, especially been out of hurling now for a while. They would have had a chance to really focus on the football. So, looking forward to see how that game goes. And similarly to the other game, Moyle Rovers and Lochmore. Moyle Rovers bet Lochmore in the quarter-final last year. If you go back to 2021, they played in a semi-final. Both of those games, Lochmore won that year. Both of those games only a point in it. So, that's going to be another really close game. And I'm hoping for two good games of football in Cashel, and a double header there on Sunday at 1:00. So looking forward to both of those games. And I suppose for football in general, we have those trial games to come. I think is it 2 weeks' time where they're doing the interprovincial kind of tournament with the rule changes. So I'm really looking forward to see how that goes as well in football in general, because it definitely needed something to happen.
Yeah, Noel, how do you see the semis going?
Yeah, I think I mentioned earlier on about the venue being a deciding factor, maybe in the intermediate final, and I think similarly on Sunday with the football. I think Commercials would probably have preferred a pitch other than Cashel to take on Kilsheelan. So they prefer maybe a bigger pitch where they can use the expanses a bit better. So I think Kilsheelan have a real opportunity there. Now, Commercials don't lose too many county semi-finals, to be fair. They're able to eke out those results, and they would be favourites and favourites on merit, I suppose, too. But like the lads are saying, Kilsheelan, Kilcash have a free shot here, and I think they'll really go at it. In the other game, well, look, I'd probably be able to predict a lot of results quicker than predicting who's going to win between Lochmore and Moyle Rovers, but it'll probably end up something like 6 points to 5 or something like that, given the nature of the clashes between them. But Lochmore are in a really good vein across the hurling and football, and people say, how come they're not tired and all that? You're never tired when you're winning, but if you lose a game, you can be maybe point to tiredness then. But I think Lochmore are in really good form, and the incentive to get back to a second county final, a double again, that's going to be fair hard to beat.
It seems to be serious. There's a sort of momentum with Moyle Rovers now, or sorry, Lochmore now. But like Moyle Rovers are unbeaten all year. They're in the county junior A hurling final as well. So like they're going for a double too. Like so, like there's a lot on the line for both clubs. Like so, I suppose the one thing Lochmore don't want is extra time on Sunday. I suppose neither team do, because the county finals the following weekend. Yeah, this is going to be very, very good. You think just with the way Lochmore just don't look like they're going to lose games at the moment. Like they'll find some way maybe to eke it by a point or two, but like it'll be a very, 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 very tight game.
Yeah, River Power says, I think Quirk is injured for Mile Rovers. Big loss there. That could influence it.
Yeah.
Final thing to touch on then, the Camogie Championship, and I'll just run through the results in senior there, Shane. So Burgess Duhara 110 and Cashel King Cormac's 316, Thurles Sarsfield's 330, Knockavilla Kickham's 16, Clonolty Rossmore 214, Aero Gannacarty 19, and Drummond Inch 215, Shannon Rovers 8. So you might pick the bones on that.
Yeah, so we're down to the semi-finals now on Saturday week. It's Drum against Clonolty. I think it was the final pairing for the last 4 years, and you have Thurles against Cashel. So you'll have a new, in a recent context, you'll have a new team in the final. I tell you, Thurles are absolutely motoring. Like their scores they're putting up are incredible, and like it's not just Karen Kennedy, it's the Loughnans, it's some of the young players. The previous Dakelum has brought her minor form with her. I tell you, no one knows about them. They're absolute. And they hammered Cashel in the group game a few weeks ago. But like I'd expect this semi-final to be a lot closer. Cashel, we hope to get Uno to her back, but like Philly Fogarty she's absolutely playing great stuff. One of the greats from the Tipperary team of 25 years ago. She's really leading that line well for Cashel. And then you have Drummond and Clonolty. I suppose Drum would be hoping Emer McGrath went out of the game last weekend with an injury, and like she's their best forward. I suppose for Clonolty's point of view, like they've suffered at Drum's hands the last few years, and maybe Sarah Friday being back from Dubai adds to their forward line, and maybe they'll get. I think that'll be a brilliant semi-final. There'll be very, very little between them in county finals the last few years, but yeah, I'd say if Drum are going for 5 in a row, but I'd say if they do get to it, by God, they'll earn it, whether it's with Clonolty and then potentially Thurles maybe in the final if that's where Thurles go.
Yeah, Paul, who's kind of showing the most form as far as you're concerned?
Thurles, I suppose. Yeah, they're playing unbelievable. Like 330 is like a massive score to put up in a county quarter final. And similarly to what Shane was saying there for Drum, like if Emer McGrath is out, like she's their free taker, she's their main forward, that would be a massive loss. So we'll see how that injury goes, and it's probably a real chance for Clonolty Rossmore to finally get one over Drummond Inch, and albeit they'd probably prefer if it was a final. They've played in the last 4 finals against each other, and Clonolty have lost by a score, I think, in nearly all of those finals. So if they're to win that, it would be massive for Clonolty to get over that hump. But Sarsfields look like the team to beat at the minute now. If they were to come up against a Drum in a final, if that was the way it was to work out, Drum would have the more experience in those kind of situations. But the way Thurles are playing, they do have Karen Kennedy. They have plenty of good young players coming through. But with Karen Kennedy, you have that star player that can win a game on her own if needs be. So I'd nearly see Thurles as probably maybe the favourites from here on, depending on that Emer McGrath injury for Drum.
Yeah, final word to you, Noel.
Yeah, look, from a Thurles point of view, I suppose it's an incredible position to be in, considering that, maybe I think it was about 10 years ago, maybe a little more, that the late John Enright put a proposal to convention in the club that the club might take on Camogie. Camogie was at a low ebb in Thurles at the time, and Camogie was under the banner of just Thurles. It wasn't Thurles Arses or it wasn't any other club, it was just Thurles, and it needed something, and the proposal was accepted. And also into the mix came ladies football, and I have to say it was an inspired move by John Enright, a man who had many inspiring moments and thoughts for the club in terms of physical development of facilities and all of that as well. And it has been an incredible about change in Thurles Arses to have the ladies football and Camogie teams involved and now going so well. But a lot of hard work has gone in behind the scenes. from underage right up to this senior team. As you say, Karen Kendi and her sister Emer are probably two of the stalwarts of the team at this stage. But the introduction of the likes of the Coppingers and the Stakehams and the Purcells, they've made a big difference to this team. Loughnans as well, a big difference to the team, and they're the ones that are kind of driving it on now. So I think they're probably in a very good position. They have a lot of momentum behind them. But Drummer there, Clonoulty are still there, and obviously Cashel as well. It's all to play for. It's all to play for. But I think Thurles probably have a real opportunity here.
Shane, any final thoughts before we finish up?
Yeah, I suppose just before we go, I just want to mention the passing of Pat O'Callaghan down in Thurles. Anybody in the media knows Pat because I had a time we parking up on Morris Park, and the thing, if he slagged you, he liked you. He'd always have a slagging with you, like he'd be giving out, or especially with the media, like we were always the last to leave the stadium, and of course he'd be mad to get home, like, and he'd be giving out, but it's all a bit of fun, like, and like you think over the years, I don't know, Noel probably knows how many years he was caretaker in Dr. Morris Park. He probably has seen every Tipperary player, more than even managers. Managers come and go, but caretakers stay there, and he's seen them all going through there. And just I hadn't come across him in recent times. Like I would have parked in there last Saturday evening. I wasn't aware that he had recently gotten ill, and just sad. It's just one of the great characters. Like, and as I say, if you got into his storage room for a cup of tea, you were doing well. Like you didn't get the tea and biscuits off Pat unless he liked you, and I know his removal is even just it's a great gentleman, and it's just some of the great stories, and even the way he was one of the first sessions John Evans had in the stay in Morris Park, and there was a regulation with the stadium or the residents that the lights had to go off at 9 o'clock, and Tip were still training, and the lights were off, and John Evans knew not to mess with Pat. Pat was Pat. Dr. Morris Carrick was Pat's. They were Pat's pitches and Pat's venue, and just a lovely man. Very, very sad, great character. Noel, I know you probably know him more than the rest of us.
Yeah, sure, I knew him very well. All right, yeah, and as you say, he was a great character, but he loved Morris Park. He worked hard up there, and he loved the venue, and he took great pride in the pitches and in the condition of the pitches. He'd always be giving out at the height of it when he'd be in, from early afternoon until late at night, and every night, and it was practically every night at that time, But he'd be giving out. He was always giving out, but it was given out in a good way, He loved it. He loved being there. It was his life outside of his family. And he had retired there just before the start of the summer, and I think not a lot of people would have known that he had retired and stepped away from it, and unfortunately ill health gripped him, and it's a sad day for his families, for his two daughters and his son David. So or yesterday Gravanham.
Would he have been there from the start? No, it's like that. Dr. Morris was late 90s when that got up and running.
No, he wasn't. He took over there from Philly Butler. He's there for about 15 years, I think. Yeah, Philly Butler would have been there before him, and a few others as well would have been there, kind of on and off and that. But certainly Pat was the constant there, and he would have overseen quite a lot of developments in terms of the third pitch coming in, and more recently the redevelopment of the dressing rooms and all that. Like, and if you needed to find out where there was a cable or a wire running under the ground or whatever, Pat and John Ryan would have been the two people that you turned to. They were the ones who knew everything there. And it's sad. It's a sad time for Tip hurling. As you say, Shane, his removal is this evening and burial tomorrow. And I gather the funeral entourage is going to pass through Dr. Morris Park one last time tomorrow morning.
It's a lovely touch. Well, look, best wishes to his family and friends. So that's it for the show this week, lads. Thanks very much, and look, there's plenty more to look forward to in the weeks ahead. Thanks very much, lads.
Cheers, lads. Thanks for that.
Take care.